Let us look into one more example, the Airbnb narrative. All of us know about Airbnb. The founder narrative is a brilliant example of story versus data. Their entire narrative shows how a startup without funds, without fame, or a market simply used storytelling techniques and not statistics to create a belief and reshape an entire industry to themselves. Their context was that of a struggle that became a beautiful story. The story begins not with market data, but with a problem of real life. It was the year 2007. Two young designers, Brian Chesky and Joe Gebbia, were struggling to pay rent for their San Francisco apartment. At the same time, in San Francisco, the city was hosting an international design conference and the hotels were totally booked. They thought, what if we rent out our living room to attendees who are not able to find a hotel? What did they do? They bought 3 air mattresses, set up a simple breakfast service, and named their idea Air Bed and Breakfast. Air, Bed and Breakfast. First night, 3 guests came. They charged $80 a night. That's it. No funding, no business plan, no data. Just a story of necessity which was solved with a creative idea. Their early struggle in those days, if they would have used data, they would have killed their story. In 2008, they pitched the idea to multiple investors. Every data point that they were saying, they felt that it actually would not work. For example, who would sleep in a stranger's house? On the other hand, the global hotel industry was worth $550 billion. And they were 2 guys with 3 air beds. Market service predicted zero scalability. No one believed them because by data logic, it was totally absurd. But then, what Airbnb had was a lovely story. What did they say? They said, we are helping people belong anywhere in the world. That single narrative, belonging, became the emotional foundation for the brand. Let us now look into what these 2 people actually did, the hero's journey in real life. The founder's story followed a classic narrative arc, mirroring the hero's journey model, the same framework which is used in films and in literature. Let us look into this in different stages as how the story was built and what is the Airbnb reality in actuality. For the whole world, there were 2 broke designers sharing an apartment in San Francisco. But they were adventuresome. They realized their adventure when they thought that they had a problem to solve. They didn't have rent. They didn't have money to give their rent. And the hotels were running full during that design convention. So their initial struggle was when they just used air beds for their guests to sleep on the floor and in a stranger's living room. Now, this was a concept which was initially rejected by more than 7 investors, and these 2 gentlemen didn't have money. What did they do then? They resorted to selling Obama O's and Cap McCain cereal during 2008 elections to simply raise funds, and they raised about $30,000. But then came the breakthrough when they were accepted by Y Combinator Accelerator in the year 2009. And slowly the transformation began. They redefined air, bed, and breakfast into Airbnb. They started redefining hospitality. By 2020, Airbnb was valued at $100+ billion, operating in 220 countries. What a reward for an idea which just began with 3 airbeds. Their founding story became the brand's DNA, proof that belief and not data can build an entire empire. Their emotional core of their entire brand is belong anywhere.
12 years ago, 3 guests checked into an Airbnb for the first time. Today, 3 new guests check in every half second, making each half second a chance to go from stranger to friend, to embrace another culture, to see yourself in someone else from across the globe. The more we interact with one another, the more we realize our differences are only imagined. People are people, no matter what side of the planet they're from. Today marks the 500 millionth guest arrival on our platform, as well as one more half second towards a world where anyone can belong anywhere.
When Airbnb rebranded itself in the year 2014, they didn't focus on listings or pricing. They launched a philosophy encapsulated by their new tagline, belong anywhere. You travel anywhere, but you'll be taken into a beautiful home. Their launch video begins with a story, not statistics. You can belong anywhere. It's the idea that home isn't where you are from. It is where you feel you belong. They started to talk about visual storytelling. Their campaigns became vividly visual. Real homes, not hotels. Hosts welcoming travelers with warmth. People sharing food, music, and laughter. There's not a single data point or a data chart, yet millions of people connected with Airbnb's story instantly. Let us now look into how traditional hotels use data to drive their brands, and what does Airbnb do? A traditional hotel ad generally uses hooks like 1,200 hotels worldwide, best rates guaranteed, 4.8-star cleanliness rating. These appeal to logic of the human brain, comfort, convenience, and price. Whereas Airbnb's storytelling approach as a marketing tool was very different. Airbnb humanized the experience. Live there. Don't just stay there. Belong anywhere. Homes that make the world smaller. Instead of focusing on rooms, they started focusing on relationships of the guests and the hosts. Let us look into the key milestones into how Airbnb storytelling slowly evolved over a period of time. 2007, it was the campaign that spoke only about the founder's story. It was a focus on necessity to invention. The emotional edge was the creative risk. Remember, they were broke designers. In the year 2013, they started to air Airbnb stories. Real host, real guest, instantly creating a connection with the viewers. In the year 2014 came their brand line, Belong Anywhere. That was the story. Human acceptance. And that just rode globally. In the year 2016, their campaign came out with authentic stories of people traveling. Their campaigns showed immersive experience that was built into the storytelling campaign as a storytelling component of the campaign. In 2020, as the pandemic hit the world, Airbnb addressed the crisis, expressed gratitude to their customers, viewers, and their hosts. And the campaign said the story of made possible by our hosts. Each story used real people, not actors. Authenticity became the power of their storytelling. It is just not storytelling. This was converted into quantifiable results. Even though storytelling is very emotional, the outcomes of a good story is measurable. Their brand recognition from 2% in the year 2009 rose to 90% globally by the year 2020. Their listings skyrocketed from 4,000 in 2010 to 7 million by 2023. Their valuation shot above $100 billion after their IPO in the year 2020. The Airbnb community started growing. They today have registered 4 million hosts and 1.5 billion guest arrivals in a year. They did a wonderful social engagement. The Belong Anywhere campaign generated 200 plus million impressions organically. And note, these numbers just followed a story. They didn't create the story. They said what was real and true in the world of Airbnb. How did Airbnb build this movement? Not just the market, they actually changed the market. What did they do? Airbnb did not sell beds. It sold belonging. The narrative totally transformed. Travel became a connection. Hosts became micro-entrepreneurs. Customers became Airbnb community members. Even during the crisis time of pandemic in the year 2020, there also the story came out first with empathy. To our hosts and guests, thank you for making people feel at home even when the world stood still. And honestly, the world really stood still at that time. But Airbnb welcomed people into their homes. There was no PR jargon, there were no data points. It was just plain, pure, simple humanity. Why does the Airbnb story work? Let us look into how their emotional principle works on the brand and how does it actually appear to the viewer or the customer or the consumer. Authenticity appears in the struggle, in the real struggle of the founders. There is no gloss at all. Empathy appears as a focus point on belonging. You come to a home and you belong, but not accommodation. The tone of data-driven campaigns, would that be of corporate professionalism? But of Airbnb, it became warm, personal, with authentic stories. The hero of the story for a professional hotel or hotel chains is always the brand. Let us say the Taj or the Oberoi. But for Airbnb, the hero was people, both host and the guest. The emotional hook of traditional hotels or the big chains is to show comfort. Airbnb showed belonging. Data use is done as a proof of quality. But in Airbnb, proof of quality was in humanity, was in the real stories. Impact of the hotels are in creating reliability through trust. But Airbnb stories or the campaigns or the ads spoke of love, human love through relatability. Remember, we are talking about the business of story. Story being used as a marketing and communication tool. So the founder's story is a marketing tool here. Even after becoming a global company, Airbnb still uses the founder narrative as the brand's soul. Brian Chesky often tells and retells the 3 Airbed story in interviews, keynote speeches, and investor briefings. He once said, if we ever forget the story of how we began, 3 beds, 3 guests, and a promise of belonging, we will lose our magic. That story keeps the brand Airbnb authentic, no matter how big it gets. A perfect marketing and communication tool. Dear learners, what are the takeaways for you from the Airbnb example? 1. Data informs markets. Story informs hearts. People connect with people, not with platforms. The origin of your story is your brand's emotional equity. Never, never discard it. Before I close, I would like to tell you a small quote. Marketing is about values. It's a complicated and noisy world, and we won't get a chance to get people to remember much about us. So, we have to be clear on what we want them to know. This was said by none other than Steve Jobs. He used and said that this is the internal mantra of Airbnb. I hope you all know what is a brand mantra. A brand mantra is the soul of a brand. Like for Apple, the soul is invention and innovation. Whatever they do, it's always about innovation and invention. But for Airbnb, the brand mantra, the soul, is human belonging. In a global world, we connect with people wherever you go. I travel from here to Africa, I find a lovely Airbnb and a lovely host. I travel from Africa to, let's say, Australia. I again find a wonderful host. And in different cultures, different places. So the brand mantra, the soul of Airbnb's story is how they grew up and still they keep the emotional connect. Any storytelling business needs to touch the hearts of the viewers and the listeners and your customers and your consumers. A perfect example of how storytelling can be used and is being used by one of the biggest brands of the world, Airbnb.